What is up? Welcome to Mock It Like It's Hot, Club Fantasy's weekly mock draft show. We have been covering charity drafts for the last few weeks on the show, and weeks where I didn't take off because we've been really hit or miss for the last month. But it is finally time, though everybody else has already done their episode, for us to talk about the granddaddy of them all, the Scott Fish Bowl draft. It is our first Scott Fish Bowl mock of the season, and we have excellent guests to kick this whole thing off. I am so excited for tonight's show. I'm so excited to talk about Scott Fish Bowl. You know what? The draft room's full. Let's just go ahead and get into it as I delay here because I do not have my song ready to queue up. Now it is. Talk to you in a second. What is up? Welcome to Mock It Like It's Hot, Club Fantasy's weekly mock draft show. I am your host, Ryan Weisse. With me, as always, Austin Amandolia. Austin, can you tell it's been a while since I've been on? I forget to have the video queued up. I fumble the intro. It's just like doing the show with me 2 years ago.
So. Yeah, at least you remembered my name. That's a good start to get some wins in on the show.
I'm always going to get your name, but let's also not forget that I've also introed this show as the wrong show before. I've called it No Pun Intended or DFS and Chill and all of our other great shows that I've done here at Club Fantasy. I get scatterbrained in those intros sometimes.
Yeah, the intros are tough. We're professionals. It takes practice.
I am not a professional. But guys, as I mentioned in that intro, if you stuck with me long enough, we are finally ready to talk Scott Fish Bowl. We have talked about a lot of great charity drafts over the last month, but we knew this time of year everybody's worried about one draft, and we are about 2 weeks away from the slow draft starting. We already have live drafts in the books, so we are going to do our first Scott Fish Bowl mock. And because this is such a long mock, before I even intro my guests, I'm actually just going to get this thing up and started right now because I went ahead and included all 22 rounds in this draft. So rather than waste everybody's time, I'm clicking get this thing started. I'll talk to you guys about who's drafting with us and all that fun stuff. But first, let me go ahead and introduce my guest. I'm going to start with the person who hasn't been on the show before. And that is, when I say hasn't been on the show, I mean live on air, because Jamie has been drafting with us for quite a while. Jamie Perog, welcome. Fantasy Six Pack and Going for Two, correct?
Yeah, and I also do some RPO football show, IDP, and offense.
I'm going to yell at one of our guests. Somebody has their sound on. Please turn it off. It comes through your mic so loud. No problems one way or the other. And then last season, we had one of my new friends that I met at Scott Fish Bowl Live, Lewis Hall. I was going to make a joke in the intro of the show that I completely butchered, that we have a great beard, a great accent, and great fantasy analysis. Lewis, welcome back to the show, my friend.
I assume I'm the great beard, right?
Yeah, exactly. And everybody's here for my accent, obviously. The girls go crazy over the Midwestern Ohio accent. Everybody knows that. So, but Lewis, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you. I can't wait to see you again in a couple of weeks. So,
yes, sir. We're right on that time again as as we look forward to the live drafts, and I'm on the clock, and then you knew this would happen to me the moment
exactly.
We started this.
Well, I told you, just tell me to shut up. So we got Lewis and Jamie both drafting with us, and as I mentioned, we will break down Scott Fish Bowl here in just a second. Let me at least, if you've never watched one of our shows before, we are not breaking down every draft. At the end of the show, I will give these three the ability to talk about the teams they have drafted. But if I do at least like to acknowledge the people who are drafting with us. A lot of them are in the chat right now. We have Gotcha 420 picking from the 1 spot, Duarte from the 2, Better Vision at the 3. Fantasy Faith, our good friend Faith Enos, is at the 4. Our other good friend Gator J is at the 5. It's a Club Fantasy row here because Austin took the 6. Big Game James, that's Jamie, is at the 7. Lewis is at the 8. So my 3 co-hosts are also all sniping each other. The man from down under, Vince Mapstone, who is actually hosting the Scott Fish Bowl Australia draft. Vince Mapstone is picking from the 9. Doomby at the 10. Philadelphia Alec, who is in the chat, at the 11. And Stephen George, who I've seen in the chat before as well, at the 12. This is a family affair for all the Club Fantasy folks tonight. Let me start by talking about these rules. So Scott Fish Bowl got a little weird this year. And if you're looking at the settings on the screen, you're not going to be able to see. Actually, you don't even see what I see. I went ahead and added positions so people could find positions, but there is no positions in Scott Fish Bowl this year. It is 9 flex spots and 2 super flex spots. And the scoring is such that you technically don't even have to start quarterbacks in those super flex. If you want to get really wild with your draft, there are people talking about drafting all tight ends. I'm going to get more into the scoring later, but I really just want to start with these guys. Jamie, what did you think when you saw this scoring? Because last year he added the kick return, he took it away this year, but this is the first year going with just straight up no positional requirements. And I have thoughts, but I want to hear yours first.
Yeah, I love having the non-positional. It just allows you to strategize however you want. You don't have to draft quarterbacks. And with the scoring, I love the scoring. It kind of values those rushing quarterbacks that get volume, and also like the rushing quarterbacks and the tight ends. So I did a draft where I drafted 13 total tight ends rounds. I think I had 9 in the first 13. And I liked my team afterwards.
Yeah, it certainly gives an element that we've never seen before in Scott Fishbowl. Lewis, when I remember last year was the first year where he went onesie positions, where you only had to start one guy at each position. I play in some leagues like that. For this year with the fluidity, I feel like kind of what Jamie said, building a team around the exact players you want feels a lot more viable this year.
Yeah, and we made this comment last year that, and I remember Austin really doubling down on this point, is the thing about Scott Fishbowl as well is you're here to have fun. This is about rooting for your guys. It's about picking what you want. It's about Austin doubled down on you try different strategies. This is a free league. It's all about contributing to charity. And this thing I really found as I've kind of gone through some mocks this year, values are all over the place because the scoring's over the place, because it's an all flex league. And I'm very new to an all flex league. This is my first time. I know you mentioned that that's not the case for you guys.
Yeah.
But certainly for me. So it's wild because as I'm going through mock drafts, I'm not seeing any sort of status quo. Each one is its own organism, which I'm finding I'm finding fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's going to be very interesting, and I think that's going to be the case. There's going to be an ADP, but I don't think you're going to be able to rely on the ADP at all. Austin, as Lewis alluded to, this is old hat for us here at Club Fantasy, because our Writers League that we started 3 years ago has always been all flex. It's had some not suitable for work names that I won't mention on the air anymore. Some of them I regret. It's those things that you look back on, you're like, yeah, that was funny then. It's not funny anymore. So anyway, what I will say is, Austin, we have done this for quite a while here as an all flex league. I'm going to say my thoughts now, Austin, and get your thoughts. I think for a big tournament like this, the all flex thing is absolutely genius, because as Lewis said, you now get to pick your guys and root for your guys and have those guys on your team. For our small league where trades are involved, I thought it kind of makes things boring, Austin, because we don't do trades. You don't need to trade for anybody when you can start anybody at any position.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not fun unless you're winning, and then it's super fun. So
Austin won last year, folks, in case you haven't figured that out yet. So
yeah, so you need to get back to winning the league. That's all, Ryan, and then it'll be fun again to not trade. No, I mean, I agree with your point though. In a traditional redraft league, or if you were to do this for a dynasty league, I do think it starts to take away more of the transaction side of it. I mean, the waiver wire is still pretty active in our writer league. In part, that's because we still have defense and nonsense like that.
Well, and it's a 14-team league, and I do short benches on purpose to keep that. So
yeah, well, and I don't love that part, but that's just me. I want to hog all the good players. No, but so I agree that it's not really conducive to a redraft league, but for this type of setup where you're really just trying to pick the best players, I think it's incredible. I mean, I think it's fascinating to get into the different strategies of multiple tight ends, things like that. But ultimately, the thing that I love about our redraft league and about Scott Fishbowl this year is it does come down to just draft the best players. It's really going to be, we're not in a position where it's oh, you have to get an elite quarterback in order to be competitive in this league, in this format. You can go a lot of different directions and have a lot of upside.
And that's I think what Scott's thing was from the outset here. There was some waffling where Scott Fish said it was not going to be third round reversal, and then apparently he was bullied into making it third round reversal. I do want to quickly run down some of the more unique rules. He started to he geared things back towards passing, but that was to try to make quarterbacks more viable with all these points. So it's 1 point for every 25 yards now, where it had gotten up, I believe, in previous years. It is also half a point per carry and then 2.5 points per reception across the board on Sleeper. There are some different things on MFL where it's 1 point per reception, but also 1 point per target on MFL. So like if you're playing on the different sites, things get even more strange now. I'm sure he has done the math that that's not going to affect things when we get into the playoffs, but I think it could, which I find wild, but not like in a bad way. Like you'll never get me to say anything bad about Scott Fishbowl scoring, because it is all for the fun. And that's kind of where I want to go next, guys. He did also add IDP scoring, and everybody needs to be very aware of that, because that's the first player we're going to be talking about, who happened to be the first player off the board in the draft tonight. But I do want to give you guys a chance to talk about your time with Scott Fishbowl. Now, Jamie, you've been in the industry a little while. How many Scott Fishbowls are you in, and have you done any of the live events yet?
I haven't done any of the lives. I really do want to get down there, because it's only about 30, 40 minutes from my house. So I could even Uber down there if I need to, so I can drink. But I started at Scott Fishbowl 12. I got in going for 2 crew. And then on Scott Fishbowl 13, I actually got invited by Ryan McDowell himself.
That's awesome.
Shows. And then I just keep getting invited back every year. So I love it. I even got my Scott Fishbowl 13 jersey on right now, custom made.
I got my Scott Fishbowl Blockbuster shirt on. I worked for Blockbuster Video for a great many years. So when I saw that logo, there was no way I couldn't get that shirt. Lewis, you and I obviously met at Scott Fishbowl, I believe 13 at the live draft.
Correct.
I did not make the 12 live draft, which was the first year he did live drafts. Were you at the 12, or was 13 your first live as well?
No, 13 was my not only first live, but first kind of entry into Scott Fishbowl as well. So I got in via a donation to CBS's Podathon for St. Jude's, and drafted with Chris Towers and a few other Hutch as well. And then last year I was there drafting against yourself. And when I saw you place yourself again in a live draft this year, I switched leagues to be in your division so that I could be drafting against you again this year, sir.
I love that. And technically that'll now make 3 years in a row that you've drafted against me, because that first year I stood next to Hutch's dad and pretty much helped him the entire draft.
That's exactly correct. Yes, I was drafting at you, not even in the same division. So it's 3 years of competing.
And then Austin, I know you've done Scott Fishbowl a couple of times. I believe you've not done a live to this point, and probably are not doing one as well this year, correct?
Yeah, I have not done a live yet. I think this is my 4th season in Scott Fishbowl. And yeah, overall, it's been frankly a rough experience for me in terms of performing well. I am like traditionally awful at Scott Fishbowl leagues, but have not made it to made it to a live draft yet. I
distracted you while you're on the clock here, Austin.
You did distract me on the talk, but you know what? I can do this. I can manage. I will say the thing that I do love that Scott Fish has done over the past several years is make the leagues have some sort of geographic focus.
Yeah.
And so I ended up, this year all the leagues are based on different professional sports teams, and so there were plenty of options for North Carolina, and I ended up in a Carolina Hurricanes league, and we're all locals. And so once everybody got in the chat, we're all like saying like, oh, I'm from this part of the state, and and so it does at least create the possibility that we can meet up in person or whatnot and grab a beer, and that's always a fun aspect of the Scott Fishbowl.
Yeah, this will be my 9th Scott Fishbowl. I got it in Scott Fishbowl 7 a lot of years ago. Was not able to make the live draft the first year, but have made the live draft since then. People keep begging me, friends of mine, to come to their towns for the live draft, but I just love New York City so much, and it's going to take a lot to pry me away from New York City. I will answer Faith's question real quick. She asked what league I'm in. So I took the Mets division. Austin has made me a de facto baseball fan this season because he has me in fantasy baseball this year, and I play a baseball video game rather religiously. And so it came down to obviously Mets or Yankees, and I couldn't give Josh the satisfaction of me being in the Yankees division. Plus my favorite color is orange. So everything just really worked over in me choosing the Mets. And then, as I mentioned, Lewis asked me what division I was in, and he's like, okay, well now I'm switching divisions because I want to go against you, which I thought was very, very awesome. I was very happy about that. So
I'm actually in a baseball division too. I joined the Cleveland Indians or Guardians now, but
Yeah.
I still call them Indians. So
Now,
I'm not even a fan. I just
are you in Northeast Ohio, Jamie?
Yeah, I live like probably 30 minutes from Cleveland.
So I grew up in Massillon, so probably 20 minutes further south from where you are, if I had to guess.
I'm in Brunswick right now, like Medina area.
Okay. Yeah. I worked at the Medina Blockbuster for 4 years, folks. That's the kind of connections that Scott Fishbowl makes. Jamie probably met me and doesn't even realize he did. I was the manager who was charging you late fees all those years ago. As I mentioned before, guys, we do not break down every single team in this draft, but we are going to start looking at some of the early picks here as we get into it. And then I definitely feel like we need to talk about the first pick of the draft. Scott Fishbowl has 11 starters, 9 flex spots, 2 super flex spots, and 11 benches, and we are doing all 22 rounds today. I try to always make sure this show goes no more than an hour. We might go a little bit over an hour tonight. If anybody needs to bounce off, Austin's computer might die. It's going to be an interesting evening. But the first thing I like to do is just kind of break down the first 3 rounds of the draft, especially in a draft like this, where it is third round reversal. I like to break down the first 3 rounds, and you guys can get an idea of how vastly different this type of league can be. So keep in mind, there are no positional requirements. A lot of people will tell you in a super flex, you still want to go quarterback. If you look at last year's scoring, there's some refuse to that, but let's talk about this draft. It starts off with Travis Hunter from the 1-1. We're going to talk about that. Jamar Chase at 2, Lamar Jackson at 3, Brock Bowers, Trey McBride go 4-5. Faith is never going to let Brock Bowers get by her in a Scott Fishbowl draft. Bijan Robinson at 6, Saquon Barkley at 7, Josh Allen at 8. Those are from my 3 drafters here with me tonight. Jahmyr Gibbs goes 9. Jaden Daniels was an auto pick. He goes 10. Adumbi has been auto picking the entire draft, so we probably won't talk much about that team. Ashton Genty at 11, Joe Burrow at 12. Justin Jefferson at the 2-1, Derrick Henry, CeeDee Lamb, Christian McCaffrey. And then my drafters go Puka Nacua, Jalen Hurts, Brian Thomas Jr. We got Gator J doubling up on tight ends, Faith doubling up on Georgia Bulldogs with Lad McConkey. Malik Neighbors falls all the way to the 210, Amon-Ra St. Brown at 11, and Nico Collins at 12. But Joe Ortiz, who is the 101 there, did not have the next pick because of his third round reversal. Goes all the way back to Stephen George, who takes Patrick Mahomes. Devon Achane goes next. Bo Nix, Josh Jacobs, Drake London, Jonathan Taylor, A.J. Brown, Bucky Irving, Baker Mayfield, Kyron Williams, Sam Laporta, and then Marvin Harrison rounds out the third round. And guys, I always like to start this with the exact same question. Any surprising picks? Lewis, I'll get started with you. So when we're looking at these first 36 picks, I mean, Scott Fishbowl is going to be a weird draft anyway, and we already have a couple of weird things we need to talk about. Any surprise picks other than Travis Hunter? Because that is the next topic we're talking about.
As I said, that was the low hanging fruit. And your point, it was not a surprise seeing Faith take Brock Bowers after she
not even
professed
a
her
little
love
bit.
for him in the New York City live draft last year, and would draft him everywhere. No, I think this has been relatively, chalk, for want of a better phrase. I think the best value I see in the first round was Austin getting Bijan. I think he's kind of someone I've seen very rarely slip out of the kind of top 2 or 3 picks. So I think getting Bijan there, not a surprise in the sense of just him being sort of a high pick, but I'm surprised that he fell that far. Not that 60 is that far a fall, but that's one of the latest I've seen him go in any mocks I've been in.
Well, and to Lewis's point, I created a mirror league, and now if you're in your league, you can see the scoring. But Bijan Robinson was the number 1 scorer in Scott Fishbowl, and this year's scoring, based on last year's stats, Bijan Robinson was the number 1 scorer, and now he falls all the way to 6. So I think that's a really good point. Jamie, same sort of question. When you look at these first 36 picks, anything kind of surprise you? We have a couple of teams going with the double quarterbacks already. We have one team going with 2 tight ends, and we're not going to talk about his picks later, but he already has 3 tight ends on that same team. So
the Travis Hunter pick. I know you get IDP points, right? But how much?
Save it. That's our next topic. We're going to only talk about Travis Hunter next. Any other picks?
Other than that, let's see. I don't know. I like it. I think Kittle, I've been getting him in the 3rd a lot.
Okay.
So it might be a little early, but I like him in the 2nd. And
I was going to say, what's most interesting to me is the builds.
Yeah.
The 12th pick overall, I mean, he took 2 quarterbacks in the first 3 picks, but they're not really rushing quarterbacks. They're more volume quarterbacks. And
yeah,
I don't know how I feel about that in this format.
Yeah. I agree with that completely. We're going to spend some time on Steven George's team because I have some questions about that build as well. Austin, you've been doing this for a while, and any of these picks jumping out of you other than Travis Hunter, which I promise you folks is the very next topic we're talking about. So.
Yeah, well, Lewis took mine, which was actually Bijan Robinson, because in this format last year, he was the #1 scoring player, and it wasn't like by a little; it was by a decent amount. He was a full 14 points ahead of Saquon Barkley. Barkley hitting 2,000 yards last year, and still Bijan Robinson outperformed him in the scoring last year. That's one. The other one that I want to point out is just the fact that actually 4 quarterbacks go in the first round. Reason that is interesting to me is in the scoring setting last year, only 1 quarterback finished in the top 12 of players in overall scoring. And because of the nature of this league where you don't have to start a quarterback and there is a drop off in the quarterback in this scoring, I think it's notable to see 4 go in that first round. I'm not sure if that'll happen in actual drafts. And if so, I think there's going to be plenty of value at those other positions.
And Jamie, I'm going to let you get us started because you were about to jump in on this. Let's talk about Travis Hunter. So I'm going to let you break down all the reasons, but Travis Hunter goes as the 101. And the reason people are loving Travis Hunter is there is IDP scoring, and Travis Hunter is the only feasible player in Scott Fishbowl who's going to benefit from that IDP scoring. 101 seems high to me. What are your thoughts, Jamie?
Yeah, so I mean, he's going to be a receiver, right? He's not going to be a full-time receiver. Maybe 80%, hopefully, that we're hoping on, and then maybe 20% at the IDP. But even if he is playing IDP, he's not going to get that many targets. Maybe 5 targets to the receiver. So that could be, I don't know what the scoring on tackles is. But he can get maybe 3-4 tackles a game.
I say it's good scoring. So a single tackle gets him, a solo tackle gets him 2 points, an assisted tackle gets him 1. We're not going to really talk much about his tackles for a loss, but pass defended gets him 1. And if he picks a ball off, it is 6 points. It's like scoring a touchdown.
He might get maybe 3-4 picks in a year, depending on how much he plays. But who's to say they're even going to target his receiver when he's on that field?
Yeah.
So it makes me a little nervous going to 101, especially. I would probably put him more in that 3rd, 4th round area.
Lewis, you pointed out earlier on that you've noticed the ADPs, there seem to be no rhyme, no reason, and it's pretty wildly different. I imagine Travis Hunter is probably one of the first guys to jump off that same page to you, where if you've done multiple mock drafts of this, I'm guessing Hunter's been all over the board. It kind of reminds me of some of the big kick returners from last season.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think we've seen that everywhere. I think you see that in sort of how he's valued redraft, not kind of included in the scoring next year. I think this year, I think you've seen that even in Dynasty. How do you treat him? Is he a 102? Is he a 106? I think you're really seeing varying values of him across the board, just because we really don't know how things are going to play out. We don't know truly. And I think even when the Jags signed him to his contract this year, I think they sent 2 tweets out saying they just signed their wide receiver and they just signed their defensive back. Even they're having fun with it, which is fantastic, but it leaves us as fantasy players not having any clue where he can go. So the variance on him, and this is to your point, last year the novelty was the kick returners, and we had a great discussion about that and where they should be drafted. And to see scoring this year so specifically for one player, it's just that kind of perfect novelty and kind of that little mind. Do I want to be the one that misses out on him if he has the
so I want to throw Joe Ortiz up here real quick because he says, who says they're not going to target him as a rookie? And I drafted him. So I did a IDP mock last night and I drafted him in the 2nd round. And I was a little shocked he fell to me in the 2nd round. It was a super flex IDP mock, but Lewis, that's exactly what they said about me on the show. And they were right, is I want to have the golden ticket. I want to see how it works out. So
I'm pretty confident we had the same exact conversation last year, Ryan.
and Josh said, he is Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah, I was going to say, Josh and I have not agreed on a lot recently when it comes to any kind of fantasy take, but this is one place where we actually do agree. And I do think I said this last year about Rashid Shaheed, where I was like, I'm going to let somebody else draft him. I think I have gotten into the trap. When I've done worse in Scott Fishbowl, it's when I get into the novelty and I lean into it too much. So I think the 1st or 2nd year, I think it was the first year because it was it was me learning freaking MFL for the first time ever. And you could start 4 kickers, and the scoring was such that it was like, maybe you can start 4 kickers. Who knows?
I remember that. I remember that scoring.
And I went for it, and I sucked that year. And so I have just shied away from that. And I think to Jamie's point, like what Travis Hunter has to do as a defensive player in order to pay off the 101 is bonkers. It's not just going to be like a few interceptions here and there. He needs to have like a Trayvon Diggs season in order to really pay that off. And then also be getting 6-7 catches a game to pay off that ADP.
I'm going to quickly see what Sleeper is projecting, because I know when it first came out on the scoring, there were some pretty wild Travis Hunter projections. I work for Football Guys, and our draft dominator moved him up to the wide receiver 2 overall. When I added IDP scoring to mine, it moved him up to the wide receiver 10. Overall, Sleeper has him, what am I at, 6, 7, 8, still haven't found him, 9, 10, 11, 12. We're still going 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Oh man, this is way more than I thought it was going to be. You guys did not tune in to hear me count. I think I'm done looking for Travis Hunter. I don't see him on the projections. So that's concerning for as high as he just got drafted. Maybe I just missed him. But to everybody,
fairness, the IDP projections in general on Sleeper are not super.
Okay. Because I am struggling here. I am still scrolling and not finding him. So this may be more of a sleeper issue. So I won't read too much into this, but for my own projections, he as just a wide receiver stats out. It's like my wide receiver 33. He did jump up to my wide receiver 10 with very modest IDP projections. Normally on this show, everybody, I don't talk about everybody's team, but this is a different kind of draft. This is about charity. And I do want to mention the charity aspect of Scott Fishbowl. We've kind of already alluded to this. The best part about Scott Fishbowl is the people you're going to meet either through your league chats like Austin or the live drafts like me and Lewis. Like there's a lot of really cool stuff about this, but it also benefits Fantasy Cares, and Fantasy Cares is almost a direct arm of Toys for Tots, where they go out to all these different cities and spend all this money on all these toys. And it's just such a really cool feeling in seeing those pictures. If you guys are not following Scott Fish and Fantasy Cares on Twitter or whatever social media you're using, fix that, especially if you didn't make Scott Fishbowl this year, because the easiest way to get in, even now, still, if you did not make Scott Fishbowl, there are going to be people who are missing their drafts in the next 2 weeks, and he's going to put out calls on Twitter and through Fantasy Cares, and those are the people who are going to get in. So if you're upset, you're watching this, that you didn't make it, donate to Fantasy Cares and make sure you're following those guys. There's still going to be a chance. But what I wanted to get at here is, my goodness, are we seeing some wild builds? And so, Jamie, I'm going to start with you because you started to allude to somebody. And I want to remind everybody, first of all, this show is always about learning and learning through mock drafting. But I also want to remind everybody that this Scott Fishbowl scoring is completely wild, and anything I say could and probably will be wrong. I also, as I mentioned before, we don't judge every team. I'm going to have the draft up here. The draft is still going on in the background, but we just have the top up right now. But without further ado, Jamie, I want to talk about Stephen George's team.
And before you do that,
yeah,
I wanted to name that Stephen George in the sleeper chat said that they thought that there were trades in Scott Fishbowl.
Okay, well, you know what? Then we're not even going to talk about it. Austin has already cleared that problem up. Though I do want to talk about something Jamie said. So we are going to talk about his team a little bit. But he mentioned, thank you, Austin. You are saving me going at somebody here who is a valued listener, because don't take 4 quarterbacks, folks. Certainly not this early. You can only start 2. Fill up some of your starting lineup. But thank you, Austin. That clears that up. But Jamie, let's go in a little bit more. You mentioned that you're avoiding quarterbacks with no rushing upside, and Stephen George kind of took 4 of them. And this is a format that kind of lends itself to rushing quarterbacks if you're going to load up on quarterbacks.
Yeah, and plus what he did is we start 11. So you have 2 players that you took in the first 5 rounds that you're going to get zeros for.
Well, no. And that goes to the point where he thought he could trade them.
Don't draft to even trade like that, because
that's a good point. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
No one bites. In this format, you don't have to start a quarterback. So I'm not taking that chance. I'm going after the people that are actually going to put up points. But yeah, I'm not even going Burrow that early. I think you can get him in maybe the 3rd third round.
See, and that's again, in some leagues, maybe you can, some leagues you can't. You guys are all going with relatively balanced builds. Lewis, when I slide over to our buddy Alec and then our other buddy Vince Mapstone, very heavy. I don't think you're ever going to see a draft start with 7 running backs like we did out of Vince, and then 6 out of 7 like we did out of Alec. And then the fact that they're picking right next to each other, that's 13 running backs, 14 if you throw Caleb Johnson in, going on just that side of the board to 2 teams.
Well, and then our very own James, also, who's the other side of me, has taken kind of for the first 8 rounds, took 6 running backs and 2.
So yeah, look at folks. I'm going to highlight this real quick. You have Jamie, who took 6, and Vince, who took 7, leaving absolutely nothing for Lewis in the middle there.
Hence why you see so much blue in mine. In the sense of making sure I'm just picking up the value at wide receiver. And I know when kind of the 3 of us kind of did this last year, Austin said that that's always his kind of preference to build. So it's he and I have gone for very similar builds amongst kind of the running backs. So I think that's kind of it's been the theme of this show, in the sense of Scott has created this format where you can take it in so many different approaches that you're going to see in a tournament like this, people go in for varying different strategies to see ultimately what's going to land them, just the amount of upside you need to win something like this. And so the whole, we touched upon it, ADP and values, and those they just don't exist in this league because it's so ambiguous in how you want to build your teams. And so, I feel very kind of strong about, particularly on sleeper compared to sort of MFL, but making sure you're targeting guys who are going to catch the ball as much as possible. And so I'm kind of steering away from running backs where I don't think there's as much upside for catches as there is on the wide receiver side, which, I know sounds really obvious, but that's just the way I'm kind of thinking about my build this year.
No, I think that's great. And I love that you're taking so much away from what Austin said last year. Austin, I'm going to have you talk about those kind of builds, but I'm also going to throw Gator J up here, who has 5 tight ends now of his first 10 picks. So again, it's very ambiguous. You're going to be able to build your team however you want. As someone I know who has recently won a championship in this format, obviously you love your build, and we're going to talk more about that. But for the most part, do you see credence to all of the different kind of builds we're seeing right now?
I don't think all. That's like I think you should build however you want, because first off, like that's always my principle, is like trust your gut. If you believe me and I help and I change what you think about and you trust me, great. But like I also, like for this league in particular, it's for fun. I'm not saying like, oh, you should go gamble your money on this certain strategy like I do on best ball drafts. Like that's a whole different thing where I get more kind of strong in my takes. But for this, like if it's fun to have 5 tight ends, go for it. Now, if you are trying to win, I kind of am looking to just focus on who do I think is going to be best overall at that point in the draft. I find it hard to imagine that there are 5 tight ends in the first 10 rounds that are going to be better than 5 players at receiver or running back through those 10 rounds. And similarly with quarterback, like the quarterback situation is actually going to be really interesting, which leads me to a point I want to bring up with Scott Fishbowl in general, is just a reminder for folks who maybe are new to Sleeper or new to Scott Fishbowl, that if you go into your Sleeper app and you go to the players tab, you can look at how the players scored in this scoring system last year. Now, that's not to say they're going to score the same this year, but what it allows you to do is to look at a player like Bijan Robinson or Saquon Barkley and say, what did they have to do last year to perform at that fantasy level? And where did they finish? And that can help you give a sense of, okay, if I am drafting a player at the 101, Travis Hunter, he has to score 672 points in the season to have been the number 1 fantasy player this last year. And it just helps you give a gauge for where you can go. And so that's how I'm thinking of it as I'm going throughout, as I look at last year to inform this year, even though individual players are not going to repeat what they did. And so because of that, I'm looking very much at like the positional drop off within these positions. So for quarterback in particular, like it doesn't feel super important to me to get one of the elite quarterbacks early. But there is a point where I'm like, okay, quarterback starts to be more valuable than the position players. So I'm just being very like strategic of when I go for those positions like quarterback and tight end, that, have the potential upside, but aren't necessarily inherently going to be league winners.
Jamie, we spent a lot of time talking about this last year, and Austin's been kind of tiptoeing around it. And I feel like he was going to get there before the show ended. But in a big tournament like this, especially with the wild build variances, are you approaching this more as like a big best ball tournament, Jamie, where you want your roster just to be as different from everybody else's as possible?
Yeah, except we're not playing to win. We're not going to win this.
I love that. Yes. We've all talked about that.
My thing is have fun. So like what I'm going to do right now, since I just got, I went on auto pick. Yes. Okay.
All right. Perfect.
So I was going to say, I just got sniped with Tillman. So I'm going to take my favorite player, Roshan Johnson, even though it might be a little early, but I love Roshan Johnson. 2 years ago, I took him at the 107 because I raised over $200 for charity for the fantasy players. Take Roshan Johnson in his rookie year at 107. Yeah, he was RB8 his first game, but I didn't play him. He didn't do anything. But still, I love the guy. I think he's actually going to do pretty dang good this year. So in the 14th round that we're in, I'll take him.
I think that is such a good point. And Lewis, it's kind of what you've been saying from the very beginning of the show. I feel like I'm trying to push people into some sort of strategy, but I think there's never been a more get your guy tournament than Scott Fishbowl this year.
Yeah, I can agree more. And I come into this season, and I mentioned to you guys before. I look back at how I mock drafted in this last year versus how I did in Scott Fishbowl. And I took Anthony Richardson last year in our draft at I think the 6th spot, and we were talking about JB had done that at the 101 last year. Now obviously he's still on the board this year, which shows how far he's fallen. I look back. I took Puka in the 2nd round last year in this mock draft. I've done the same again. We joked last year. You asked me, do I get to own Drake London in every draft I'm in just because of where I'm from? I took him in the 3rd round this year.
I love it.
It's kind of all played out in the sense of it is really just take your guys back kind of your process, back the people that you want on your team, because it is just all about rooting for whatever you possibly want on a Sunday. And the camaraderie is what we're all here for.
Austin, Jamie already yelled at me that nobody's playing in this tournament to win. But if they were, is there a best ball mindset they can carry over from my favorite best ball fantasy analyst?
Yeah, I might be the only person that's like, yeah, it's for charity, but also I want to win the charity league. And yeah, I do thinking along those lines of best ball, in terms of you need the extreme upside to hit in this league is a good way to think about it. At least on the tournament side. Now, the one thing I would say is like, you still need a good team. And the thing about the Scott Fishbowl and the way the playoff systems work, and Ryan, correct me if this is not how they work anymore, but they typically, yes, it is still how they work. So it's not just make it to the playoffs and then be the best in the playoffs. And that's where you need to focus on like all of the week 15, 16, 17, et cetera, like having that upside down the stretch. It's also about
season.
Yeah, you have to be good the whole season. You have to have, once you get to the playoffs, it's your average score plus your playoff scores. And so at that point, with that in mind, I'm like, yeah, you just need the best team. And so I'm going to focus on how do I draft the best team? And will I maybe overdraft someone for that? A little bit, but I'm also going to follow whatever kind of ADP is out there and make sure I'm not reaching too far on guys and sacrifice value elsewhere. And I think that's where some of that like tournament mindset comes in, of like really focusing on opportunity cost throughout. Like, to me, the opportunity cost of letting Bijan Robinson go past the 101 for Travis Hunter is huge, right? If Travis Hunter doesn't hit, there's going to be a significant drop off in your team automatically. Yeah. So if you are thinking like strategically that way, I would just make sure you're assessing your options each time and thinking about, okay, if I take this player here, who am I not getting to draft because of that?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I saw a question in the chat about asking a dynasty question. Ask away. These guys are great for that kind of question, and we'll be more than happy to fit it into the show. Right now, we are talking about Scott Fishbowl. I'm not going to read every one of these middle round picks, but I did scroll the draft down to round 5, and I want to just kind of look at the middle round a little bit, and the board at least starts to get a little bit more varied on the colors. We're not seeing so many blocks of colors except for Austin's team, which we will get to in just a little bit when I have him break his team down at the end. But guys, this is where we're starting to see that tight end pickup. So Lewis, do you think this is a situation where, because right now in these mock drafts, there's no way to accurately judge tight end premium. So this is probably just everybody knowing how many extra points tight ends are getting and loading up on them. And you didn't fall into that. And I don't want to call it a trap, but you didn't fall into that trap. Whereas we have like Better Vision and Gator J, who each have 4 tight ends, and even Alec, who he did go to auto at some point. We're seeing a lot of 4 tight end builds now we get down here. And someone alluded to that a little bit earlier, but now I feel like in the middle, people feel a little bit more comfortable with it. Is that something where it's just like, maybe we're overthinking tight end premium, Lewis?
Yeah. And I think last year we didn't, but that's because as we, you had to start a tight end. The fact that now this is an all flex league, you are really, and Austin's touched on this point, you are drafting at any time you're on the board. You're drafting based on every other position around you and what you think the person's going to do individually, but without the kind of the scarcity of the nature of who you're drafting. Obviously, we're still able to start 2 quarterbacks, but we've obviously mentioned that there could be outscoring of quarterbacks because of the wild scoring format. But I think the tight end, the nature of there not being an actual position means that the value you're looking at sort of when you're picking up a player, I think it's now much more about the board and not just you getting a tight end for the sake of filling a spot on your roster, because Scott's taken that away from us. So yeah, it's where the value falls for you. And where I took Hockenson there, I just felt that just kind of an extra year back off the injury. I just felt his upside again on the sleeper side of things versus MFL, where you're rewarded for receptions. I just felt the upside was too good there for me to pass on a tight end.
Lewis, I tricked you into auto draft there. So click yourself off of auto draft. That's my fault. I got you at that question. Austin, when you look at these picks, other than the plethora, every starting tight end in the NFL going from rounds 5 to 10, it looks like just about every quarterback as well. Or do any specific picks stand out to you, Austin?
I think specific picks. I mean, I have to actually, I'm just going to talk about my own team for a second, because I think it gets at the point that Lewis was just making and the question you're asking, and also builds on the point about the best ball thinking, because I do think the best ball framework is helpful for the tournament aspect of this, and thinking about the upside you need to do well in the format. But where it is not a helpful thing is that it's not best ball. You don't just get the best points every
you have
week.
to start somebody every week.
You have to make decisions about who you're starting. And I was just poking around in Sleeper to see, like, okay, how did these players perform last year? I just took DeAndre Hopkins in the 17th round. I auto-picked Kyle Pitts in the 11th round. Now, these are guys I'm not going to talk about at the end of the show, so I'm going to talk about it now. DeAndre Hopkins scored more fantasy points in this format than Kyle Pitts did last year.
Oh, my.
And so we talk about this all the time whenever it comes to the tight end premium format in general. It often just helps the elite tight ends be even more elite and be more crucial. So guys like Brock Bowers and Trey McBride, George Kittle, I get taking them early. After that, I get incredibly less interested in the tight end position overall. And Kyle Pitts is a really great example of that. And I don't love that auto pick at this point.
Yeah, I would say we're all going to hate auto picks at some point. And Jamie, the one thing I'm noticing is, interestingly enough, half of the board is sticking with running backs and the other half is sticking with wide receivers. So there's still some varied picks as we get into these middle picks, but everybody's kind of sticking to their guns. It feels like whatever they decided was the more valuable position, that's what they're staying with. Do you think it's going to play that way in the real drafts? Do you think this is just a mock draft thing? And then again, do any of these specific picks stand out to you?
No, take your guys.
That is the theme of the show, folks. Get your guys.
I'm not an Anthony Richardson guy this year, but in the 17th round, I think someone took him in their 6th overall pick last year.
Yeah,
I got him 17. why not? Just take that chance. He's going to most likely be on my bench anyway, more than 75% of the year. He might even be droppable if I need to pick someone up, because we're at that point where, you know, we're going to be dropping some players, picking people up off waivers.
Yeah.
On the pick clock now.
Yes. Don't let me trick you into an auto. I'm good at that.
That's a really great point, though, that Jamie brings up. Like,
really
we're at a point in the draft where we're not going to be starting a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
So, all right, got it.
No, you're good. And Austin agrees with you, Jamie. Like, we're at the point in the draft where, like, these guys aren't our starters. So now we're kind of swinging for the fences, right?
Exactly. Like, I was going to take Monungai because I took Roshan.
Yeah.
Probably should have took him the previous round when I took Russell Wilson. But I do that for style points. So I also have like other running backs that I just pair up, and then this late you could just grab them, and if they don't work out, drop them.
There you go. This is the point in the show, guys, where I'm ready, locked, and loaded with my keep, trade, cut question for you. And one of the guys happens to appear in the user question from Too Rich and Bree TV. This is a Dynasty Superflex trade question. It is tight end premium. They are wondering, should they trade Amon-Ra St. Brown for Drake London and Devontae Adams? And there is the possibility that they will also get the 2027 second round pick back. So they are giving up their Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they are getting back Drake London, Devontae Adams, and possibly a 2027 second. Austin, how do you feel about this?
I feel great about it because I love Drake London, and I think you're doing kind of two things at once, which you don't often get to do in Dynasty, where you're, I believe, getting a little bit younger because I think London is a little bit younger than Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think they're pretty like similar players, and from a fantasy perspective, you get a future draft pick, and you also get a player that could perform really well this year in Devontae Adams on a 1-year deal. And could help you push for a championship depending on the rest of your team build. So I would personally make this move.
Lewis, I made my tasteless Britain joke about Drake London being your favorite player 2 years in a row now. We've brought it up on the show, but are you making that trade if you're on a Dynasty roster?
Yeah, big time. I think the way, if you look back at the 3 games that Penix started last year, and just, I think Drake London was kind of top 3, top 5 overall wide receiver during that point. I think we're hearing Dan Campbell talk so much about Jameson Williams this year and him having a bigger role. Frank Ragnow retiring and Ben Johnson having left. I'm kind of a little nervous over Amon-Ra St. Brown enough that I don't think you're down tiering an awful lot from Amon-Ra to Drake London anyway. And then to get the upside of, to Austin's point, you get Devontae Adams as a push for this year. And who knows what that 27 pick will be in 2 years' time. But everybody in the Dynasty community is talking about how good that draft will be. And
Yes,
that could end up being an early pick as well. So I think it's an absolute no-brainer to take the London Devontae side there. And I would probably take it as is on those two. The 27 second on top is cherry on the cake.
Jamie, are you going to make it 3 for 3 on this one?
Yeah. So London, I have in my top 8. St. Brown, maybe 5. So you're only downgrading 2 or 3 spots, and you're getting Devontae Adams on top of that. So if you are a contending team, adding Adams and London, that's a smash, because Adams is going to get all those red zone targets, those deep balls, and then we got London. Like you said, he was top receiver last year. He got 35% of the target share when Penix came in, and 40% of the team's air yards. So wheels up for London. I think this time next year, London's going to be ranked over St. Brown.
There you go. So obviously you are very much on board with with that when you see the guy rising. Guess what? I agree as well. And I agree so much with Lewis that I would take this trade without the pick, but I am also I'm so very greedy. At the very least, see if he'll just give you a third. Yes. If the second is in play, but if he'll give you a third just to make the trade go through, you're getting an asset that could be viewed as equal as Amon-Ra St. Brown, a great asset for this year and a draft pick, make that trade as quickly as you can. And guys, I'm glad to hear that you all like Davante Adams, because he was my keep trade cut for the evening. Me and Josh have been doing a lot of discussion about wide receiver twos in fantasy football this season. And George Pickens is a name that kept coming up, but he did not fit into this question, though by ADP, all of these guys, Pickens included, but he's not a part of the question, are going one round away from each other. And so I want you guys to keep trading cut what I view to be the best wide receiver twos in fantasy football right now. Austin, it is T. Higgins, Davante Adams, and Devonta Smith from the Philadelphia Eagles. Keep, trade, cut. We'll call it Scott Fishbowl scoring.
Well, we're cutting Davante Adams. That's the easy one for me in all of this. We will keep T. Higgins and trade Devonta Smith. And it's just because I would rather have Higgins over Smith. A lot of times I make this determination based off of trade value. And I think that T. Higgins likely has slightly better trade value than Devonta Smith, but I want to have Smith or Higgins on my team. So I want to keep him kind of no matter what in this situation. Although I will say I do think Devonta Smith is a value this year.
I'm very interested to see Josh's answer, because you answered very quickly, and we have used this as an example to hate on T. Higgins. Lewis, how do you feel about this one? T. Higgins, Davante Adams, Devonta Smith. How are you keep trade cutting these guys?
I am, and I say this as a Steelers fan, as we discussed before. Yeah. I am keeping T. Higgins. I think that defense on the Bengals side is again so bad that they're going to have to throw the ball, and I think Higgins has top 12 upside kind of through that. The trading cut between Devonta Smith and Davante Adams is interesting. Obviously, if you're thinking dynasty, if you're not a win now team, then you're trading Adams to get what you can. So I'm gonna go down that path since we had the dynasty question. I'm gonna trade Davante Adams off the back of people knowing he has value for this year, and that means I'm cutting Devonta Smith. But if I'm thinking selfishly for kind of long term, I would obviously reverse that. But for this season, I think Adams will have greater output than Devonta Smith.
Yeah, and Josh did chime in. I'll get to his answer in a second. But Jamie, how do you feel about that? It seems like T. Higgins is the consensus here. And I'll be honest, I asked this question expecting some T. Higgins hate. Are you going to give it to me?
So I usually trade for value, but I also want points on my roster.
Okay.
So I'm going to keep T. Higgins. And I'm going to trade Devonta Smith and cut Adams only because he's going to be like 33 years old. And I think you can get more value out of the trade with a younger Devonta Smith than you can with Adams.
I like Josh would trade T. Higgins just because I do think there's value there. And I'm also a guy who I can never trust starting T. Higgins. If this were best ball, I feel a lot better about T. Higgins, but if I have to choose to put him in my lineup, it's never happening. And I would actually probably keep Devonta Smith because he is younger, and I would cut Davante Adams. So our answers are pretty wildly different with that one. But hey, it was way more entertaining than I thought it was going to be, Austin. Sometimes I swing and miss on those keep trade cuts. Guys, I'm gonna have you guys all break down your teams here in just a second. Before we do that, I'm just kind of scrolling the draft board for the folks at home. I have round 10 up on the board right now. I'm gonna scroll down to the bottom, but I would just ask you guys one or two players that you were very shocked are available this late in the draft that weren't on your teams, because I'm going to let you talk about your teams. So like you guys have already kind of talked about Richardson and Hopkins, but when you look around the other teams in this draft, are there any picks that stand out to you, Austin, that you're shocked they fell this late in the draft?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of interesting things happening in this draft, but I think among them are players like I'd say Keenan Allen in particular falling this far. Like, I know he had a rough year last year, but even like if he has like a couple games where he's getting 5-6 catches, like having him go behind DJ, not going to have starts, Giddens, and guys like Jerome Ford, like it feels like a little bit far for me for him to fall. So that feels like a really big value. Also, like there's some backup receivers, like third or fourth string receivers that go really late it's interesting to me they went that late. One that stuck out to me was Andre Yoshivas. We've seen him get decent targets when T. Higgins and or Jamar Chase missed time, and we've also seen him even get good targets just as a receiver, wide receiver 3 on that team. So again, like him going super late is was a little bit surprising to me. And those are kind of the guys I'm looking at in this. There are some other ones out there, like the Green Bay receivers falling as far as they did. Like they're going to throw at some of their receivers. So like,
yeah,
there's going to be at least one of them that is definitely definitely valuable in this format.
Lewis, I was going to ask you specifically as a Steelers fan about Aaron Rodgers, but you took him. So I'll let you talk about that when you talk about your team. But any other players that you see that you didn't get a chance to draft that you were a little shocked at how late they fell?
There's one intriguing. There was a few I was thinking about picking out, but I think the one I'm going to pick out is a guy I was actually torn between in the 16th round, and we actually had a conversation last year about coach speak and how much we let that influence. And I said last year I don't, and then this year I did. I took Pat Bryant in the 16th round over Demario Douglas, who went just there in the 17th round. And I just think the again in this format where catches are so valued, the slot that and it's interesting where does Diggs play in that format and in that team and how do they kind of line up their wide receivers? But I think Demario Douglas in this format where you're starting so many flexes and the rewards are there for catches, I think the slot guy for what is an ascending QB in Drake May, I'm really kind of intrigued there about. I think Demario Douglas is a name sort of that late in the draft. I think could really outshine that draft pick.
I completely agree. There's one other player I wanted to talk about. I'm going to see if Jamie picks him out. But Jamie, same question. When you look at these, not the guys you drafted, because I'm going to have you talk about them in a second. Any players that you maybe got sniped on later, you were just shocked that they went as late as they did?
Yeah, Austin kept sniping me left and right. A couple players. Michael Wilson, he is going to be the number 2 receiver, probably the 3rd target on that team. I was thinking about taking him. Got sniped. Cedric Tillman, again,
he blew up. That one.
Yeah, and then Josh Downs. He's going to be a PPR monster if he doesn't have Anthony Richardson throwing to him and throwing him the ball. He'd probably shoot up like 3 or 4 rounds because you got him in the 10th round. Yeah, so I could see him going to like the 6th, 7th round, getting 14 targets a game. Give me that all day.
And then the one guy these guys didn't mention that I'll point out is in the 15th round, and that is Josh Palmer on Faith's team. Goes over to Buffalo where there's just no established, like I love Khalil Shakir, but he doesn't have like alpha written all over him. Not that Josh Palmer does. I'm just saying Josh Palmer's going to a Josh Allen-led offense, going very late in drafts and could be a home run hitter there. I like him going that late. Demario Douglas was the other one I had my eye on, Lewis, because like these are the guys I'm getting really late in best ball drafts right now. So to see them still going that late here in Scott Fishbowl is also a little shocking, and I feel like there's value there. Guys, we have reached the point of the show where I'm going to let you break down your teams. You can talk about whatever players you want. If you haven't had a chance to talk about them yet, talk about them now. Jamie, let's go ahead and get started with you. So Jamie was picking from the 7 spot. Starts his draft off with Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts, a Philadelphia back-to-back. Jamie, did you have a strategy? Did you know it was going to be all running backs when you took the 7th spot? Is running backs where you feel most comfortable right now?
No, I just let the draft fall to me, and I just saw the volume that I was going to get with Barkley, Jonathan Taylor. We saw the last 3 weeks last year when he was fully healthy off of his high ankle sprain, and he won championships.
Yeah,
Breece Hall is going to get most of the work. Kenneth Walker, I love that offense that they're going to be running. He seems to fit well in that zone scheme offense. I don't think Charbonnet is going to even come close to him, which is why I took later with my last pick, Damian Martinez, because I do think Damian Martinez falls into that category over Charbonnet. And then I'm going with the rushing quarterbacks. You saw I got Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, and later, I took Anthony Richardson and old man Russell. But then like running backs kept falling. Then I'm going to get volume with Pacheco. He's definitely going to get the volume. He's going to be healthy this year. I know he didn't do well last year because he was injured, but I think he comes back strong. He's on his contract year. He's going to want to prove that he deserves to be there and try to either get re-signed or a contract somewhere else. And then ETN, he's the lead back in that offense. So why not take a chance on him? And then I took my first receiver finally. Dang, in the 9th round, like Juwan Jennings. Like at this point, I was going to be like, okay, I'm going to take Calvin Ridley or Shakur or Jennings, and Jennings fell to me. I got him.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be the number one receiver. You're going to have Ayuk miss like half the season, and then when he does come back, how is he going to perform? We don't know.
Yeah.
So I do like that Jennings pick. Jordan Mason, short yard back, but if something does happen to Aaron Jones, I think he could be a 75% carry guy, and he's going to get all the goal line work. So the rushing points in this league, I love Jordan Mason. I would have probably even took him around earlier.
Yeah.
And Zach Ertz was my first tight end off the board. This isn't normal for me. Normally I go tight end heavier, but he was number 7 tight end last year. And I'm getting him this late.
In
like
the 11th round.
Like 14 tight ends that went before him.
15 might be low.
So I think we're discounting Zach Ertz because, like I said about Michael Wilson, yeah, he's going to be the second receiver, but I think Ertz is going to be the second target.
Yeah.
In that offense. So yeah, and then I wanted Josh Downs. So
you kind of got the Josh Downs consolation prize.
So I got Michael Pittman. So we'll see. And then Jaden Higgins, rookie guy, just taking a shot. Then I got my guy Roshan. Will Shipley is just handcuffing Barkley.
Well, I was gonna say with you drafting Saquon Barkley at the 7th. So.
Yep. So yeah, Taj Brooks, I like him. I think he can get some passing down works, maybe 30% of the carries. We don't know, but I like my team. I don't like Deontay Johnson.
Well, I thought he was your Cedric Tillman consolation prize.
I guess it's just like I keep hearing buzz about him in the camp, so I was like, why not take him? I'm probably going to cut him anyway. So
yeah, I was going to say the guys this late in the draft don't always make your team.
So yeah, this has been a fun draft. I actually like this team, and I wouldn't mind if this was my real team.
There you go. You always like walking out of drafts like that. All right, Lewis, you started off with quarterback, and then you kind of went the opposite route. Wide receivers kept falling to you.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I tend to lean that sort of build anyway. So the fact that the 3 of the kind of 5 teams around me, and the 2 either side of me were taking running back, felt that made me, I was pretty comfortable with how it played out for me. I think it's funny. I know we just mentioned there around James saying the number 1 target on the 49ers. I think I have a case, and there might be a hot take in there. I think the 6 wide receivers I took, I think could all be the number 1 targets on their team. And I think Pearsall and Jennings, there's kind of an argument to be made there and how that all plays out on Ayuk's injury. But I think the big one there is, and I touched upon him earlier, is Jameson Williams. I think just the upside of the kind of player he is, and I know 2 of your colleagues over at Football Guys, Ryan, Jeff Bell and Dave Kluge have spoke a lot this summer about how they really wouldn't be surprised if Jameson Williams actually walked away with more targets than Amon-Ra this year. Just the upside of the player he is and how he started to come on and how they really progressed him last year. I think I could have 6 wide receivers who end up being the number 1 targets on their team. I include Jameson Williams on that. And then from there, I'm kind of taking up shots, upside picks. Mason Taylor could be the second target on the Jets team. I think that's very ambiguous behind Garrett Wilson, or Breece Hall could lay claim to that, but we've heard about a potential split backfield there. I think Austin Eckler, I think if you think about the Debo role, it'd be interesting to see how Debo gets on and sort of how that might mix into Eckler. His upside might be capped, but if Debo gets hurt, I think Eckler obviously has 2 outs in terms of Brian Robertson getting hurt or Debo, and I think Eckler might reclaim some of that goal line work this year in Washington. So yeah, really it was kind of a steady stable of wide receivers who I think could be the number 1 targets. And then from there, other than a couple of auto picks.
That happens.
It was just upside picks. I think the Aaron Rodgers pick, I know you were going to ask me to talk about that. And I said last year, I don't typically take Steelers teams on my fantasy teams because it kind of hurts twice if they get hurt or, Aaron Rodgers divides opinion. Would I be overly sad if he gets hurt this year and Steelers have a much higher pick in next year's draft? I'm not so sure. If he gets hurt, maybe it's not the worst thing for my team long term for the upside. But really, at that point, again, it's coming back to Austin's point earlier. I looked at the board and I didn't have a quarterback 3, and I kind of felt, well, the upside for me is I need some insurance there, particularly given Trevor Lawrence this year we'll see how he gets on under the new head coach and sort of see his upside. But it was more a security pick, just in the sense of, yes, we don't need to start quarterbacks, but I just wanted that QB3 on the roster. And really, from that standpoint, he was the only one that I felt on the board that had kind of true job security remaining.
Yeah, say what you will about Aaron Rodgers, but he went after, and I'm talking 4 full rounds after Jalen Milroe, who is not even a confirmed anything yet. So yeah, I think the value was probably there.
Yeah.
All right, Austin, you know the deal. I don't have to explain it to you. Hero running back, if it's ever existed in fantasy draft strategy.
Yeah, well, I want to start off by saying that my original intent entering the mock draft tonight was to not take any quarterbacks and to see what my team felt like, because I do think that is a very viable strategy this year. But then I saw how the board played out, and I was like, actually, the quarterbacks are becoming value suddenly. Like having Kyler Murray with the rushing upside, getting him as my 5th pick. I felt pretty good about that. And even CJ Stroud in the 9th round, like I know he had a worse season last year than his rookie year, but I think he's going to be able to outperform several of the receivers. You know, one thing that we didn't emphasize a ton with the quarterbacks is it is a 6-point passing touchdown league. And so it does actually create some value for them. So, you know, it is worth giving a second look at those quarterbacks. They're more valuable than in standard formats. Outside of that, I'm so sad to like be pooping on Kyle Pitts the way I am this episode, but I just, there was a player that I was looking at taking with my last pick of the draft, the 22nd pick, and I ended up auto picking because I got distracted.
I was literally going to be like, Austin started and ended with a running back.
But then the player I was looking at did not even get drafted, and it was Jalen Tolbert, went undrafted in this mock draft. Jalen Tolbert just about scored as much as Kyle Pitts last year. In this scoring format. And let me tell you who he outscored in this scoring format last year. Our boy, Dalton Kincaid.
Oh my God.
So I really am concerned about tight ends looking at this. And my current takeaway from this draft is I don't know. I don't want to take a single tight end unless I manage to somehow have Trey McBride fall to me at the 212 because I have the first pick and I'm taking Bijan Robinson with it.
There you go.
So
I kind of love that we have such wildly, not me and you necessarily, but there's such wildly different opinions of Scott Fishbowl that there are people who saw this scoring as like, I'm drafting all tight ends. And then you have Austin who's like, I'm not drafting a single tight end.
Yeah. And Josh points out Tolbert's not going to score 7 touchdowns again. And that's fair. But Josh, Jalen Tolbert outscored Dalton Kincaid last year. Like that is in the scoring setting that where tight ends are getting 3.5 points per reception. Dalton Kincaid still couldn't outscore Jalen Tolbert.
There you go.
In the 22nd round, if you're getting 5 targets a game, that's something. It's going to be points on your team.
There you go.
I don't mind it.
Guys, before I do an outro here, we actually have 2 questions. One was actually about the draft. Too Rich was looking back at the draft board and wondered if 4.9 was too high for Alvin Kamara.
No.
But then he also said he thinks he'll have a huge season. So those 2 things don't quite gist with one another there. But Jamie, you already said you're liking Kamara this year.
I was looking at Kamara at the second round pick where I took Hurts. I'm like, I'm going to take Kamara there. But Hurts fell. I like that. So I was like, well, I'll get him in the 3rd round. But then Jonathan Taylor fell. And I'm like, I got to go Jonathan Taylor. I'm like, well, hopefully he falls to me in the 4th, which I don't think he did he?
Yeah, you took Breece Hall.
That was it. I was debating so hard between Breece Hall and Kamara because I think Kamara could be a top 12 overall in this league because he's going to get the touchdowns, the passes, and the rushes. So I love Kamara. I should have took Kamara with my pick, but I skipped him with even my 4th pick. So I do regret that.
Yeah, everybody on this team skipped Kamara multiple times. Lewis, any concern for Kamara? Any concern for that Saints offense? I feel like we should all be concerned about the Saints offense. But
yeah, I think that was exactly going to be my point. I chose Chase Brown over Kamara in the 4th. I just trust that offense a lot more. I kind of trust the output of it a little more. I'm kind of really scared. I don't like Kellen Moore's taken that job, and I'm hoping that they've told him that he has some job security because I think they could be the worst team in football this year. I really do. I think I'm really worried about what Kamara's output will be, not through lack of trying. is it Tyler Shuck? Is it Spencer Rattler?
Yeah.
That just doesn't appeal to me whatsoever. So no, I'm kind of really out on Kamara this year. I'm just out on that offense in general. I'm not even sure where Olave went in this draft. I've missed that entirely, but I just see him there. I see him there in the 8th round. I can't see a path to much upside in that offense this year, despite how good Kamara has been for us fantasy players for years.
Yeah, Josh is defending Kamara in the chat right now. Austin saying he was the RB6 last year, and the team may not even have a viable wide receiver 1.
Yeah, well, then that's kind of where I'm at on it. I think Alvin Kamara, like the PPR upside is really huge for this, and I think that's why I'm interested in Bijan Robinson as the 101 is because he averaged 4 or 5 catches a game. That's worth a touchdown. A touchdown and a half in this format. And I think Kamara, even if this team is awful, has the potential to be catching 4 or 5 passes a game, and that's going to be huge in Scott Fish.
All right. And then this one, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on. Does anybody have any strong thoughts for Stephen George on Michael Mayer? Obviously, I don't want to say it was a little shocking, but it was a little shocking when the Raiders took Brock Bowers last year and Mayer just fell completely off the map as Brock Bowers ascended to the to fantasy stardom. Austin, do we think this guy gets traded? I can't imagine there's playing time on the cards for him this year.
I mean, unless they do a 12 personnel setup nonstop where he's on the field with Brock Bowers all the time. I mean, if the question is what to do with Michael Mayer, I'm holding him in my dynasty leagues just because the pedigree was so good. I want to give him, and we've seen this before with tight ends. Sometimes 3rd or 4th year they start to break out. That's often when they historically have broken out. So I'm holding him, not necessarily because I think he's going to do well on the Raiders per se and have like super high upside, but I kind of just want to wait and give it a little bit more time to see if he does get traded. If maybe Brock Bowers gets hurt and then Michael Mayer steps into that role. Who knows? Like there's a lot that can happen there. So I'm definitely interested in just holding on to him.
Jamie, any thoughts on Mayer?
Oh, I 100% agree. Like his talent level is so high that I think he could be a top 12 tight end on any other team.
It's just bad situation.
So, what is he in his 3rd year? Going into his 3rd year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So we just got to wait, one more year, and he gets picked up by another team, or like he said, Brock Bowers could get injured, and he'll step right in and be that not elite number 1, but like that top 12 type of player.
Lewis, anything to add on the Raiders backup tight end? You guys were able to give me way more information than I expected there.
I think you have to look at him for a similar lens as Isaiah Likely. I think he's discount Isaiah Likely. And I think
that's a great comp, and people love drafting Likely. So.
Right. I just think in this format, I think it's one of those rare scenarios. I think Faith could handcuff Brock Bowers there and kind of get that level of upside. I think that's as a 21st, 22nd round dart thrower. I don't think that's a bad strategy at all this year. And I think to Austin's point, I think he's a hold for me if I have him, and I think he's a sort of a buy kind of cheeky throw in on deals if you're kind of struggling in a Titan premium dynasty league. I think he's one of those great kind of throw-ins that people aren't going to be, then that's not going to be a deal breaker for them.
Certainly not.
If you're kind of looking sort of especially if you're in a rebuild and you're kind of looking at dart throws for the future in a Titan premium league.
Well, there you go, Faith. If you get Brock Bowers, as we all know you will, Michael Mayer is your 22nd round pick is what everybody's saying. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you guys for joining us. Jamie, please let everybody know where they can find your work if you got anything coming out right now.
You can find me on the RPO Football Show. We do IDP and offense. I'm over at the Going for Two Live network and the Fantasy Six Pack, or just in all your YouTube chats. I also run some of the biggest fantasy football groups on Facebook. So if you're ever argued about Roshan Johnson at 2 a.m. in the morning, it's most likely with me. Lewis, thank you guys for having me on. It's been a pleasure with this epic podcast. Thank you.
Oh, for sure. What a great episode. Lewis, I love having you on every year. I love having you on 2 weeks before I get to hang out with you in person. I know you're not a content creator. Anything you want to talk about right now? Anything you want to encourage people to check out?
Well, I would say, check out the Fancy Cares shop, buy the t-shirts, buy the swag. I think every year, anyone who buys it will wear it for years on end. I think, right around now you're doing, yeah, exactly. You Jenna too. We've got 2 people here. I think I bought 7 or 8 shirts last year. I haven't chosen mine this year. Just donate in any way you can. If you're near a live draft, turn up. Those events have been fantastic. Just the camaraderie and the inclusion I felt the last couple of years as not being someone in the community. I can't recommend, if you're watching this enough and you're near a live draft, regardless of whether you're on Scott Fish or not, go to a live draft, get involved in the auctions, raise money. That's what this is all about. And if you can get to a live draft, you will get hooked on them. You won't be able to give them up. And as I say, and if you're there, you'll get swept. And as I say, some of the stuff at the auctions, I know Ryan Hallam in the New York Live has been dropping some teasers around the auction that we'll have in New York. So as I say, if you're in the area, come to New York. You'll see Ryan and I come to a live draft. There's plenty of space in Legends Bar, and hopefully you can help us all raise some cash for what is a great cause.
Yeah, July 19th. Come see me and Lewis. You'll have a ton of fun. I guarantee it. Austin, what do you got going on, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, first off, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Austin_FFL. I will have some articles coming out on clubfantasyffl.com soon. I cannot remember about what teams right now because that is how busy my life is. But
Colts and Bengals. Josh is saying you better tell him who you're writing about so he can get these graphics done. So,
yeah, good point. I should do that, shouldn't I? I'll be writing about the Colts and the Bengals, 1 player from each team. And also make sure to come join us on Discord. Come chat with us about all the best ball drafts coming out. You can watch me and Ryan have some banter about our fantasy baseball league, and we'll see if I can sleaze him on a trade for a reliever here in the coming days.
Me and Austin working on a baseball trade, something I am not familiar with at all. So this is going to be mad interesting.
Yeah, but come join us, join the community, and just reiterating everything Lewis said. Like, make sure if you're in Scott Fishbowl, or even if you're not, you donate, you buy the merch. All of that. This is all for charity, all for a good cause, and that's the whole point of this draft.
All right, everybody, wave goodbye to Jamie's son, or and I'm gonna go ahead and get us out of here. Thank you, guys.
This is my son Chase. I named him after Chase, Jamar Chase.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, he was born the year that Jamar Chase was a rookie. So I gave my wife the list of rookies, and I was like, pick a name. That's what we're gonna name. So pick Chase, and that's what we named him.
I'll share a story about that after the show. I'm going to get you guys out of here. Thank you guys so much for drafting with us. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. This show sucks without you. I say it every single week. Always remember, defense wins championships, offense wins fantasy football, and practice makes perfect. We are off next week, but we will do another Scott Fishbowl mock in 2 weeks with actor Michael Stoyanov. It's going to be a great show. We'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. Have a good one.